Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Therapeutic Nutrition. This is the fifth module and it is about the nutritional management of non-communicable diseases. This is the second lecture, that is nutritional management of diabetes. I am Dr. Jaspreet Kaur, presently working as Assistant Professor in Government College for Girls, Ludhiana, Punjab, affiliated to Punjab University, Chandigarh. And this project is funded by DTH Swayam Prabha, MHRD, New Delhi. In the first lecture about the diabetes, we had studied about the functions of pancreas in management of carbohydrates inside our body. In that case, we studied about the role of two hormones. So the first hormone was insulin, and we studied that it regulates the glucose by lowering the blood glucose level through promotion of absorption of glucose from the blood to the liver, fat, and skeletal muscle cells, and reducing breakdown of glycogen and fats. And glucagon, on the other hand, it will increase the level of blood glucose level, acting just opposite to insulin action. And together, insulin and glucagon, they will maintain the blood homeostasis inside our body. And then we studied that diabetes, it is a group of disorders which is characterized by high blood glucose concentration, which are resulting from defects in either insulin secretion or insulin action, or both of these cases. Then we studied about the prevalence of diabetes and the projections. If it is spreading at this pace, what will be the future? And then we studied about the different types of diabetes. We studied that they are type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, then gestational diabetes, and some other forms. And type 1 diabetes is caused by self-destruction of the beta cells, which will diminish the insulin levels, whereas type 2 is caused by either lowering of the insulin production or insulin resistance, which will lead to relative deficiency of the insulin, leading to hyperglycemia. And in both the conditions, in fact, in all types of diabetes, hyperglycemia is a common symptom. And then we studied about the pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes is a condition when the blood sugar level is higher than the normal, but not yet high enough to be labeled as a type 2 diabetes. So moving ahead in this lecture, we shall be studying about the etiology and the risk factors of developing the diabetes. Then we will study what are the common symptoms of the diabetes, and along with that, we will learn about the diagnostic criteria of diabetes. Risk factors, they are the factors that predispose an individual to the development of diabetes, especially insulin resistance from the diabetes, especially during type 2 diabetes mellitus. So the risk factors, they can be classified as modifiable and non-modifiable factors. Modifiable risk factors are those risk factors which can be changed by taking appropriate measures, and non-modifiable risk factors are the factors which cannot be changed. So let us see what are these factors. So coming to the non-modifiable risk factors, they are if the age is more than 40 years, then especially males, and first degree relative with the diabetes, then ethnicity, certain ethnic population, they are more prone to getting type 2 diabetes. Then history of IGT, that is impaired glucose tolerance or impaired fasting glucose levels. Then history of gestational diabetes and delivery of a heavy baby, they are non-modifiable risk factors. So coming to the modifiable risk factors, it could be polycystic ovarian syndrome among women, then acanthosis nigricans, that is a blackening of certain part of our body, especially the armpits, or it could be knuckles, it could be around the neck, which indicates that there is insulin resistance. And hypertension is another risk factor which can cause diabetes. Dyslipidemia of uh, all kinds, they can actually predispose a person to diabetes. Then certain dietary factors, we know that diet which is containing lot of fatty food, rich items, or fast food items which contains refined carbohydrates, they predispose us to obesity and other diseases. And then along with that, abdominal obesity is very important modifiable risk factor. And overweight, we know, because it will have its own effect on the development of diabetes, and because it will predispose the person to the insulin resistance, and in return, if it is not treated, this can lead to diabetes. And physical inactivity, that is another factor we all know, which it is a quite modifiable risk factor, but very important when it comes to causing type 2 diabetes. Now, if we compare the etiology of type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, there are certain similarities and certain dissimilarities, though the end result is hyperglycemia and associated risk factors. So, if we see the genetic side of the etiology, in type 1 diabetes, if we see, there are certain genes, especially they say HLA class 2 genes on chromosome 6, they are the important culprits. But here, uh, in type 2 cases, these HLA genes, they are not linked, but rather thrifty genes, then GLUT2 genes, GCGR, they are responsible. And mutations in the leptin receptors, they can be also a cause because it will change the way a person eats food. And if we see the age of onset of this problem, so in juvenile diabetics or the type 1 diabetics, it appears in two peaks. The first peak comes at around 4 to 7 years, and second peak of the cases that comes around 10 to 14 years. And when we talk about type 2 diabetics, the age is around, as we have seen, the 40 years of age. So middle-aged and elderly people, they are more likely to develop type 2 diabetes. And certain chemicals and drugs such as alloxan or other rodenticides and etc., they can actually cause damage to the beta cells of pancreas and can cause type 1 diabetes. Whereas the main reason, the main etiology in case of type 2 diabetics is lifestyle, where the food intake is not good and lack of physical activity, as we have seen in the previous slide also. So here, along with certain chemical and drug in type 1 diabetes, certain kind of viral infections such as Coxsackie virus B1 or other viruses, they can also attack the beta cells and damaging them. Whereas in type 2 diabetes, one major reason which is coming up is PCOD among women, that is polycystic ovarian disease. And women with PCOD, they are 4 times more prone to develop type 2 diabetes. And in case of type 1 diabetics, certain stress factors such as release of adrenaline or non-adrenaline and cortisol hormones, they can have an impact. Whereas in type 2 diabetes, the presence of overweight and obesity, especially android obesity, that means central obesity, where the waist hip ratio is higher, this will cause insulin insensitivity and it can cause type 2 diabetes. And in type 1 diabetes, certain immunological antibodies, where there is autoimmunity, which develops and which damages the beta cells, that is one of the reason. Whereas in type 2 diabetes, we can say we have already discussed about the GDM, that is gestational diabetes mellitus, where in pregnancy, the plasma insulin levels, they are raised by the placental hormones, and they will put burden on the pancreatic cells, and pancreas, they may be unable to meet the demands, and that leads to gestational diabetes. So if we wish to consolidate, there are several factors which have been identified that lead to abnormalities in the blood glucose level. So these include, number one, that is incretin effect. So what is this incretin effect? These incretins, they are the gut hormones that are secreted from the enteroendocrine cells into the blood within minutes after eating of the food. So one of their main physiological role is to regulate the amount of insulin that is secreted after eating. So in diabetes, this incretin effect is decreased or it is completely lost in certain cases. And along with that, there could be increased lipolysis. That means there is breakdown of fat cells releasing ketone bodies and then creating more glucose, causing more gluconeogenesis. And then the another third thing is increased hepatic glucose production. That means the liver is producing more glucose from the non-sugar substances. That is known as gluconeogenesis. And there is decreased glucose uptake by the muscle cells. And another reason is when there is neurotransmitter dysfunction. So this causes insulin resistance in the brain, which leads to increased food intake and obesity despite presence of hyperinsulinemia. There is so much of insulin in the blood, but the brain is not sensing it because it has become resistant to insulin. And the next cause could be increased glucose reabsorption. That means the kidneys, they are not shedding extra glucose, they are reabsorbing more of the glucose, thereby increasing the amount of glucose in the blood further. And along with that, in the pancreas, there could be increased glucagon secretion. As we know, glucagon, higher level of glucagon, they will cause increase in the level of blood glucose. And there is decreased insulin secretion, whatever the reason is. So all these symptoms together, they are termed as the ominous octet. So these 8 factors which are the big problems causing diabetes. So let's study about the clinical findings of a patient who is having type 2 diabetes mellitus. The first thing is he will be having abnormal pattern of insulin secretion and action of the insulin or both. And then there would be decreased cellular uptake of glucose and there will be increased postprandial glucose. Postprandial glucose is the amount of glucose present after taking full meal. And then after that, there would be increased gluconeogenesis that is resulting in the fasting hyperglycemia. And there will be hypertension and there would be dyslipidemia. So all these things along with certain other features, they are to be taken into account. These are what is the BMI. Usually, as we have already seen in the previous slides, the person who is overweight or obese, he is likely to get more problems with the diabetes. And along with that, central obesity, where the waist circumference is more than 90 centimeter in case of males and 80 centimeter in case of females, and waist to hip ratio when it is more than 9 in men and more than 0.85 in women in case of Asian people. And there is another index, that is waist to height ratio, which is again a very good index. And if it is less than 50%, that will indicate that there is central obesity in that person. So that also indicates it is one of the important clinical finding. And along with all of these things, then Echinopsis nigericans, that is I have already shown you in the previous slides, and then PCOD among women, then non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They are the classical markers of insulin resistance in the type 2 diabetes mellitus. So hence they are an important part of clinical findings of type 2 diabetes mellitus. Now let us see what are the important symptoms of diabetes. The first and foremost symptom is known as polyuria. That means frequent urination. Second important symptom is polydipsia. That means excessive thirst. And then polyphagia, that is extreme hunger. Some other symptoms of diabetes would be some unexplained weight loss, extreme fatigue, and then frequent infections. Along with that, slow healing of wounds and tingling and numbness of hands and feet. That could be another symptom. Then blurred vision and dry mouth with dry, itchy skin. Now let's understand what causes these symptoms. Even though there is lot of glucose in the blood, but it cannot go to the cells, and this will leave the cells starved for energy. And in response, the fat cells, they will start breaking down fats. This condition is known as lipolysis. And the muscle tissues, they will start breaking down the proteins. So both these, they will cause weight loss. This catabolic state makes the person feel hungry. So this condition is known as polyphagia. Poly means more, phagia means hunger. And when the rising level of glucose that passes the renal threshold, that means the kidneys, they are not in a position to hold some more glucose, they will start shedding this glucose in the urine. This condition is known as glycosuria. Glyco means glucose, urea means urine. So as the glucose is osmotically active substance, water will also be drawn out of the body along with the glucose and through the urine also, and that will lead to condition known as polyuria. That means excessive urination. Let's study about diagnostic criteria of diabetes. So the diagnosis can be done with the help of certain tests. We can take the sample, either it could be urine sample or it could be blood sample. So glycosuria and ketonuria test, they can be taken with the help of sample of urine. And similarly, blood glucose level and oral glucose tolerance test and HbA1c testing, they are the tests which are done with the help of drawing the blood sample. Now let us see what this glycosuria is. As we know, the name indicates glyco means glucose, urea means urine. So this test is the first line screening of diabetes mellitus. And normally glucose does not appear in the urine until the plasma level of the glucose that reaches above 160 to 180 milligram per deciliter. So when the glucose level will cross the threshold of the kidneys, it will be shed in the urine. So a test of measurement of this glycosuria is an index which will help us in screening about the diabetes. Ketones, they are the result of incomplete fat oxidation. And when the level of these ketone bodies, they cross the threshold of the kidney, again they are shed in the urine, just like glucose. So this condition is known as ketonuria. So if both glycosuria and ketonuria are present, the diagnosis of diabetes is considered certain. Now let's understand what are the various blood tests which are used to diagnose diabetes. They are fasting, post meal blood glucose level testing, and along with that we can go for random blood testing level also. So the fasting blood sugar level of the patient is taken when he is fasting for at least 8 hours, whereas the postprandial glucose level, that is checked 2 hours after heavy breakfast or meal. So both the tests, they are usually performed on the same day. So the blood glucose testing can be done either in a laboratory or at home also. And the main advantage is that it is easily available. And the main drawback is that it would tell us about the glucose level of the blood for the last few days only. So this is an example how simple this test is. Now let's understand an important diagnostic test for the diabetes mellitus, that is HbA1c. This term HbA1c refers to glycosylated hemoglobin. It is also referred to as hemoglobin A1c or simply A1c. It develops in the blood when the hemoglobin, it is a protein which is there in the red blood cells of our body, which carries oxygen throughout our body. It will join with the glucose in the blood and it will get glycosylated. So once we evaluate the average amount of glucose in the blood for over say 2 to 3 months of the time, then this is a right index. And a person is considered to have diabetes mellitus if the level of this glycosylated hemoglobin is above 6.5. Another test is oral glucose tolerance test. Oral glucose tolerance test is a test done to confirm the diagnosis of diabetes in doubtful cases, especially when the fasting blood glucose level or the postprandial glucose levels, they are in the borderline range and we do not know whether the person actually has diabetes. So in this test, the person has to drink 75 grams of glucose or in water on empty stomach, and blood sugar is tested after 2 hours. A 2 hour oral glucose tolerance test value which is more than 200 milligram per deciliter, it is considered diagnostic for diabetes mellitus. So now we have seen what are the different types of tests which we are using. Now let us see how to interpret them and categorize the persons according to the findings. And let us see what are the ranges for normal, pre-diabetes and diabetes. So let's try and understand how to interpret these levels. So for type 2 diabetics, the normal level of HbA1c would be less than 5.7. And if the person is pre-diabetic, it would be anywhere between 5.7 to 6.4. And if that level is beyond 6.5, we will call that person as short case of diabetes. And now coming to the fasting blood glucose level, if it is less than 100, we call that person as normal. If this level is between 100 to 126, we will call that person to have in the pre-diabetes category. And if it is more than 126 milligram per deciliter, that person will be considered a short case of diabetes. And now let us see what are the level for postprandial glucose. If it is less than 140, the person is normal, and he is a pre-diabetic if the value is between 140 to 200, and if this value is more than 200, the person is considered as diabetic. Now these are the normal levels. So let us see the targets if the person is a known case of type 2 diabetes mellitus. So the target HbA1c is less than 7, and fasting should be 70 to 130, and postprandial aim should be less than 180. And for type 1 diabetics, the level of HbA1c is less than 7.5, and fasting level should be pre-meal. That means it should be anywhere between 90 to 130, and post-meal it should be 90 to 150. And for the gestational diabetes mellitus, HbA1c has a stricter rules. They should have less than 6 HbA1c and less than 95 as fasting, and 1 hour post meal blood sugar level should be 140, and 2 hour post meal blood sugar should be less than 120. So along with that, if we go for some random testing of the blood when we do not know, because it is neither fasting nor postprandial. So if the value comes out to be 200 milligrams per deciliter or more on more than 2 occasions, that can be an indicator of diabetes. But this random blood sugar level cannot be considered as a very reliable index of diagnosis. Can we diagnose high risk population for diabetes? So, as we know, 50% of the diabetic patients, they remain undiagnosed, and that is why diabetes is also called a silent disease. So there are various laboratory and clinical tests which are used for the identification of high risk patient for the diagnosis. So this is a tool. It is known as Indian Diabetes Risk Score, which is a screening tool for the prediction of undiagnosed diabetes. It has been developed by Dr. Mohan and colleagues at MDRF Chennai. And according to this tool, there are certain scores which are assigned on the basis of age, on the presence of abdominal obesity. Third is the kind of physical activity, and genetic inheritance is taken into account when we consider about the family history. So if according to this tool, if the score is more than 60, the person is at very high risk. If it is less than 30, then probably the risk of developing this disease is very low. So a tool like this can be really helpful in assessing who are at risk of developing this disease. So let's summarize what we have studied in this lecture so far. We have studied about the modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors which predispose a person to development of diabetes. And then we studied about the etiology of diabetes, in which we learnt about a new concept that is known as ominous octet. Octet means 8, ominous means threats. So they are decreased insulin secretion, decreased in incretin effect, increased lipolysis, increased glucose reabsorption, neurotransmitter dysfunction where there is insulin resistance in the brain cells, and decreased glucose uptake by the cells. Then we studied about the symptoms of the diabetes, be it any type 1 or type 2, and the symptoms are frequent urination, which is known as polyuria, excessive thirst, which is known as polydipsia, and excessive hunger, which is known as polyphagia. And then we studied about the diagnostic criteria through the urine test and the blood test. We also learned how to interpret the results of these tests. And lastly, we studied about a tool which is known as Indian Diabetes Risk Score to identify people who are high risk population for the diabetes. We shall study more about diabetes in the next lecture. Thank you.